Namaste, hello once again. You are with us on NCERT's live phone-in program. My name is Tanvi Khurana and all the class 4 students. You're watching us and we're going to discuss the poem Why. Well, why is a very small word, but it is very meaningful. It gives you a lot of clarification, answers which we all want, and it goes on in our mind throughout. So why? That is the name, the title of the poem. If you have read it, you have any curiosity, you have learned something about it, you want to learn something about it, then just join us on our NCERT official, the YouTube channel, and write your questions, queries in the live chat box and send it to us. That's all you need to do. And you're watching us on VmVideocon Channel number 4. Well, this English session is going to be very interesting, I can guarantee. So let's meet our expert for this session. We have with us Dr. Qazi Firdausi Islam. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you.
Ma'am is from Department of Educational Studies, Faculty of Education, Jamia Millia Islamia. So let's begin this discussion on the poem Why. Ma'am, what is this poem all about?
Well, Tanvi, thank you. This poem is a very interesting one. In fact, I hope our students are ready to jump into this exciting world of why. This is actually about a curious little boy who's so curious about his world, his nature, the surroundings, in fact, about his daily life. So it's an interesting poem, and I'm sure we can all relate to this poem. Why? Because these are episodes or instances which the child has picked up from his or her natural world phenomenon, which occurs in his familiar everyday surroundings. And as we move on to the poem, before we read aloud the poem, so that our students can enjoy this, and the ones who really have joined us now, you can bring your NCERT textbooks, class 4th, and you can just open up that page and you can just join us. What do you say, Ms. Tanvi?
Absolutely. I think we shouldn't waste any more time and we should begin.
Well, the poem that we have now, it's Why, and I have made a slight PPT for y'all students. In fact, there are 2 slides. Before we actually read aloud the poem, there are 2 slides. This is one slide, and this is another one I've made. The students, before reading aloud or listening to the poem, just look into this slide, and what do you think? What are your thoughts? It's very rare that we really get time to ponder, to reflect. But you know, these are clouds, this is a sky, and these are things when we just move out of our homes, I think very rarely we actually look up into the sky. I mean, I don't know if we do it, it's very good if we do it as a habit. And this is one, and this another slide, which is this. Here you have the sky, the mountains, the nature. Well, students, you must be wondering, why do we have these 2 slides? Because these 2 slides actually form the background of this poem that we are planning to study now. So I don't know what thoughts have entered your mind, students, but I think this should begin or let you begin a wonderful journey of experiencing, of amazement, of exploring. So the little scientist or the little explorer which is inside all of you, it should actually emerge out of this poem. So now I think we should begin with the poem. So Ms. Tanvi, I would like to read out aloud the poem. So should I go ahead with this poem now?
Yes, please.
The poem is entitled Why. And children, before I read aloud the poem, you can see on your screen there's also a big question mark. It's a very small question, why, but it's extremely meaningful. So to begin the poem, we have this. I know a curious little boy who's always asking why. Why this, why that, why then, why now, why not, why by the by. So this is the first stanza of the poem. So once again I'll read it so that we all are familiar with the poem itself. I know a curious little boy who is always asking why. Why this? Why that? Why then? Why now? Why not? Why by the by? So you can see, students, there are a lot of questions into this. And obviously it's a curious little boy. So this poem is about a little boy who's extremely curious. He needs to know the answers to various questions that is in his mind. So we move on to the second stanza now. The second one, the second stanza that we have here, the first one, I think this is the second one. He wants to know why wood should swim, why lead and marble sink, why sun should shine and wind should blow, and why we eat and drink. Once again, I'll read aloud this stanza. So this little boy is there, he says, he wants to know why wood should swim, why lead and marble sink, why sun should shine and wind should blow, and why we eat and drink. So children, if you can see on your screen adjacent, so there are 5 questions. This little boy who's extremely curious, he needs to ask. So he's asking 5 type of questions. And students, don't you think we also encounter such familiar questions in our everyday life? Why do you think wood should swim? Do you think, children, wood swims? What does it mean here? It means that when you put it in water or when you throw a piece of wood into a river, it would stay afloat. It would not sink. Then he has another question, why lead and marble sink? All of you know what is a lead and a marble. Marble is a stone. And why do they sink? That means if you put it in water or a river, it will not stay afloat like the wood. It will drop down to the bottom. It will sink. So this is a curious boy who has this kind of questions in his inquisitive mind. Then he doesn't stop there. He also looks up to the nature and he says, why sun should shine? He says, why should the sun shine? So he's wondering. So from this you can find out, so this is a boy who's extremely observant. He explores. He's also patient. Because he has this thought in his mind, why should the sun shine? And why should the wind blow? So he's also familiar with the wind. So that's why he thinks and he reflects on these natural occurrences and he asks these questions. And most importantly, he asks us why we eat and drink. And students, I think we all eat and drink. But then here we have with us a reflective little boy who's actually asking questions always. He's curious enough, about the natural environment, the phenomenon in which we live and interact. So I think we all have this kind of natural tendency where we all can be curious. What do you think, Tanvi ma'am?
I totally agree. We have so much around us and we tend to ask questions, and because this is a little curious boy and it's very obvious that he's got a lot of questions.
And it is very interesting because these things happen day in and day out.
True.
Many a times we just act routine monotonously. We do not even give a thought.
Yeah.
Like, how come these natural occurrences are happening all around us? So this little curious boy, through his very innocent kind of questions, he asks us and he makes all of us think and reflect, like, why do these things happen? So let's move ahead to the next part of the poem, the second and the third stanza. So third stanza, here again he reflects on the nature. He says here he wants to know what makes the clouds and why they cross the sky. Why sinks the sun behind the hills and why the flowers die? Well, children, let's repeat it once again, the stanza. He wants to know what makes the clouds and why they cross the sky? Why sinks the sun behind the hills? And why the flowers die? So these are very interesting observations, you see, students. He first talks about the clouds, and you can see the little photograph that is there, and these are all images which are there on the internet, students. You can also look up them, and you can see the kind of questions that can come up. So these are clouds. He thinks, what does the clouds make of? So you can also ask your teachers in your science class, what are the clouds made of? You know, they look like wool, they look like cotton. You all must have made experiments with clouds. So he's inquisitive, he's questioning, what are the ingredients that make clouds? So you can ask your science teacher about it. And he's also curious why they cross the sky. I'm sure you must have also seen the movement of the clouds when you're perhaps in the garden, when you're in the park, or when you're playing with your friends, perhaps in the school during lunch. If you just look up into the sky, then you see the clouds move. So he's asking why they cross the sky. Then he says, why sinks the sun behind the hills? He's also curious about the sunrise, the sunset. So from this we get to know that a curious little boy is indeed very curious. He's very inquisitive, but he also has a scientific bent of mind, you can see. You know, he's kind of a little scientist, he's a researcher, because he has this kind of questions in his mind. He says, why should the sun sink? Do you really think the sun sinks, students? What do you think? The sun sinks? I mean, you can give your answer, which Tanvi ma'am has already said. You can give it at the chat box there. So it'll be interesting to know if you also think, like the curious boy, the sun sinks.
I think our audience is pretty intelligent, and they do know that sun doesn't sink, but it travels, and it doesn't travel, actually the earth is moving. So there is a lot of science behind all these questions, and I was about to say the same thing, that this boy is pretty intelligent, and he's going to make his parents proud very, very soon. So, and this is a very interesting poem, I must say.
And yes, I agree with you. And you know, he also thinks about the nature, that the flowers. You can see here in this slide that he talks about the flowers. Why do the flowers die? And we all know flowers bloom for a very short while. So this is a boy who's also, he has this emotional side to him. We can also see his sensitive appeal. He's also thinking about the flowers which die. And then after that, let's come to the last stanza. Some of these whys are not too hard to answer if you'll try. Others no one ever yet has found the reason why. So this is by an unknown author. So we'll just, this is the conclusion of the poem. Some of these whys are not hard to find, to answer if you'll try. Others no one ever yet have found the reason why. So here the poet's trying to say some of the whys you will have answers to them, because all of us, we know, for example, the questions the little boy has posed, we all know the questions, but some of the questions are very difficult to find, you know. For example, we know them, but we don't give much thought to them.
Yeah.
For example, here he's used about flowers, you know. Have you seen in the flowers at times in the gardens, a lot of these honeybees, they hum around the flowers with a buzzing sound.
Yeah.
So have you ever tried to find out why do they create that buzzing sound? It's interesting, isn't it?
It is.
They move around the flowers, they hop over flowers and have that buzzing sound. Or similarly around you, you can see, why do the bats hang upside down? What is the reason behind it? And after a rain, there's a rainbow. Why do you think there's a rainbow after a rain? So these are very natural phenomena, but there is a reason behind them. So most of the whys, there is an answer, but some whys are also difficult to find.
All right. Now that we have finished reading the poem, I just want to remind you that we've got 5 minutes left. So let's do a few more things related to the poem.
Absolutely. So I have prepared for a little students here, for the curious minds in us. So there is a slide, you know, there's a question answers. I just thought so. Name a few things that sink. this lid, marble, and can you guess? It can be a stone or anything which is heavy, it will sink.
Right.
Then
well, humans, if a person
Yes.
like me, if I'll jump into the water and I don't know swimming, I'll sink.
Absolutely. If you do not know, if you cannot negotiate the water.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So these are again thoughtful questions we all have. Then the 3 questions that the little boy asked, well, I have done it for you students, but then you can have your own questions too. The poem is full of questions, curious ones. And there's a question, what sort of a boy is described in the poem? It's a curious boy which is described in the poem.
I would say an interesting mind.
Yes, it is an interesting mind and an inquisitive mind. So we have this kind of few questions. I'll go to the first question. Why can't we look at the solar eclipse? You know, this is in your book. Well, the sun hides behind the moon. Well, at times we can also imagine and let our imagination wander. For example, in the second question, why can't we touch the sun? Well, it's very far away from us. True. But we can also take some certain liberties and think. We should let our minds wander. We should have this kind of creativity. And that's what poems are all about. And this another one, the third one, sorry. In fact, we'll just move to this activity here. You can do it with your parents before we close down the session. I think there's less time, as you said, Ms.
We have got 2 minutes now.
Yeah, so this thing, it's an activity you can all practice with your parents, grandparents. It's why, you know. So have you ever realized why from the same earth, different fruits, vegetables, plants grow? And why are they different in color? I mean, it's the same earth, the brown earth. But there are different kinds of fruits, vegetables, and the plants grow. So it's not very difficult to find the answer. So you can do it out as with your parents or with your teachers. And why are they different in color? So these are the activity questions, students. You can just do them with your friends and parents. And in fact, this is also something that you can look at nowadays. Why do we all have to wear masks? I think you know the answer. So this is why, the answer to which is known. Why do we wear masks, and what will happen if we do not maintain social distance, or if we do not wash our hands, you know, at least with 20 seconds. This is what has been showed on TV nowadays.
Right.
But the answer to this why is well known. So I think students stay safe, because we are all taking COVID precautions, but we know the answer for this. And I hope you enjoyed going through this poem. Thank you, Tanvi ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. It was a lovely time, and yes, it's my pleasure that you were here. And yes, this curious boy could be you, could be me, could be anybody. So if you have any questions, ask those questions to your teachers. Maybe you can Google them. Just find those answers, because if you are curious, that will lead to something. And we all need curious minds. So thank you once again for watching this program, for reading this poem, Why? And why? Keep on questioning, keep on asking these questions, and yes, I'm sure you'll get the answers very, very soon. Thank you once again. Stay healthy, stay safe, like ma'am said.
Thank you.
Namaste.